Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 4 of The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile Brand podcast. Today we're going to talk about iterating towards genius and how to take steps to determine what you can be truly great at doing. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Mike Zeller, author of The Genius Within, Your Natural Pathway to Impact, Fulfillment, and Wealth, and recently named one of the top 8 most influential speakers to follow in 2022 by USA Today. Mike, welcome to the show.
Greg, excited to be here. Thanks for having me on, my friend.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with you. So why don't we start by giving a little background on yourself and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I've started 16 different ventures in real estate, fashion, automotive, marketing, coaching, and many other arenas. And along the way, I started having entrepreneurs reach out to me, ask for wisdom, ask for 30 minutes of my time, ask for insights on how to navigate their challenges. And soon enough, I was actually coaching and mentoring guys running bigger businesses than I was, guys building $100 million plus businesses. And while I had, 55 employees at my peak in terms of my earlier stage ventures and was doing about 30 million in revenue, I was mentoring guys doing much bigger things than myself. And I started realizing I really, really love mentorship, and I love helping guide people making big decisions that could affect their whole company trajectory. But I also realized, hey, everyone's different. Everyone's got unique talents. Everyone's got a unique life experience. Everyone's got different types of key relationships and different values and passions. So I couldn't give a cookie cutter guidance or coaching for everyone. I had to give unique, custom tailored insight and help them also discover their own genius and their own pathway that would most likely lead to their highest level of success. So that's how I came about The Genius Within, and I've been fascinated with human potential for 22 years now.
That's great. That's great. Well, yeah, let's dive in, and you alluded to some of it, but let's talk a little bit more about your experience that led to writing your book, The Genius Within. So over your career, you've had great success, but also inevitably hit some rough patches along the way, as we all do from time to time.
Oh yeah.
You outlined some of both, success as well as rough patches in the book. So what is it about the rough patches in particular that helped guide you and help you grow?
Well, they often say your messes become your message, or your breakdowns become your breakthroughs, and we find, I find you learn more from your failures than your successes. And you look at other people like Sarah Blakely. Her dad at dinner every day used to ask her one question. Do you know this story, by the way, Greg?
No, I don't.
Yeah. So every day, her dad would ask her and her brother one question: what did you fail at today? And if they didn't fail at anything, they had to go out and fail at something. They had to go try something. They had to go learn. They had to go grow, because failure sets you up for growth. And so early on, when I learned that in my early 20s, I read John Maxwell's book, Failing Forward. I was like, you know what? I got to have a little fun with failure, and just not see it as failure, but see it as learning. And so I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna learn as much as I can in the next 10 years and double down. And I know some things are gonna flop. We might flourish in some things, and other things are gonna flop. So I had some flops and some things where the crap hit the fan, and just everything disintegrated. But I knew, you know what, I'm gonna learn through this, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to do what I did in 15 years. I'm going to do what I did in 15 years. I'm going to do it in 3. And that's kind of the path I've been on. And it's been a fun season because my flop season was really 2018 and 2019. And now I'm on the upswing again, and it feels great.
That's great. That's great. And I mean, I totally agree with that idea that you learn more from failures or less than successes than you do from. Sometimes you take for granted how success was achieved and stuff like that. In addition to some of the experiences that that you referred to, what motivated you to write the book in particular, and what are a few things you hope readers get from it?
What happens when someone goes through the whole process, invariably, without fail, 100% of the time, they walk away with the greatest clarity they've ever had about their genius, because they will have accumulated the most amount of clues about their genius, their gifts, their weaknesses, their strengths, their longings, their passions, their divine whispers, the moments of breakdown that led to breakthrough. They'll have accumulated so many clues that the patterns start popping like popcorn. Like if we look at some of the greatest leadership books of our time, Jim Collins' Good to Great, or Built to Last, or How the Mighty Fall, what does Jim Collins do? What he does is he goes and gathers the data, and he researches through the data and looks for the patterns to pop. So if you know what you're looking for, and you start seeing patterns emerge, now you can make much smarter decisions. What does Jeff Bezos do every day? He has one goal. His one goal is to make 2 smart strategic decisions. I think he's a pretty good guy to follow. He's one of the
Yeah.
wealthiest men in the world. So I realized, as I've been mentoring, 300 plus entrepreneurs and leaders and executives for the last 7 years, I was like, you know what? I got to package this up. I got to refine it. I got to make it even clearer and easier for people to understand how to find their genius, because I'm obsessed with it. I think Socrates was obsessed with it. He said, "To know thyself is the beginning of all wisdom." I'm obsessed with knowing myself and helping others know themselves better, so they make even smarter decisions in their personal life and in their business.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about this concept of unlocking internal genius. You referred to that at the top of the show. So while everyone's potential or even definition of success might be different, what are some common ways of thinking about achieving success that can help people start unlocking their potential?
Hmm. I think first you got to start looking at the moments. I have people do a life and death exercise, which is where you take down a simple sheet of paper or in your notebook, and you say life at the top of one page. On the other page, you write death. And then you go back and look at all the things in your life that have brought you life, especially in the last week or last 30 days. And then look at all the things that brought you death. And then also notice what is missing, like in the life category. Like if hey, for example, playing basketball brings me life. I love just playing a good game of hoops, or getting a massage, reading a book. If I haven't done those things in 6 months, then chances are I'm not that happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if my death list if my calendar is filled up with things that are in the death category, guess what? I'm probably going to be miserable. Like I was coaching one of my clients right now, one-on-one clients. He's CEO of a film production company, one of the most successful companies in his arena in the country. And when we started working together, guess what? He came in and he's like, Mike, I'm depressed. I'm battling depression. And this is a guy we met through church. He's normally a very inspired dude, very creative genius. And his company just had a record year the year before in the midst of a pandemic. I was like, all right, David, let's break this down. We did a life and death list. I took him through all 5 of the personality tests, and we realized his whole calendar was 70% of his calendar was filled with things that he was not good at, that were not fulfilling, that he was not inspired by. And of course, 2 weeks later, we had stripped 80% of those away. And guess what? He was re-inspired. He didn't even need his depression medicine anymore. He was feeling great, and he was inspired again. So anyway, that's what I've. If you get clarity on your life and death and your gifts, your talents, all those things, like the 4 main quadrants, your joy factor expands, your commitment, your resolve, your ability to step into your gifting all expand in a significant way.
What about that person that um, is kind of even doubting the premise of their ability to even be a genius? Where do you kind of start with that? And even if they believe they're good at something, they don't necessarily believe they'll be great at anything.
Yeah, one of my favorite stats I learned recently is in 1968, they did a study of creativity, of really the genius level of creativity. And they found that 98% of 4 and 5-year-olds scored a genius level on the creative scale. But then 2% of NASA astronauts scored a genius level on human creativity.
Wow.
And the reason is because, as we, especially when you think of typical educational institutions, what happens is we're trained to be aware of what we're not good at. School system is like, oh, you got red marks, like get average at everything, do decent at everything. Oh, you suck at math, well, you need to get a tutor. Instead of, hey, you're brilliant at film creation or storytelling, why don't you get a tutor for that and double down on that? You look at peak performers in anything, you're like, man, what do they do? They don't try and get good at their weakest points. Usually,
Right.
they double down on what they're amazing at and manage their weaknesses.
How do you coach someone to do that? I mean, the example of the guy that 80% of his calendar was doing things that he's not good at. I've been there myself. I've been put in roles where I thought I would be good at it. I realized not only wasn't I not good at it, I didn't even want to be good at it. Right? Because there's also a difference there of like sometimes there's a challenge. Like for me, it was public speaking. I don't consider myself a great public speaker by any means, but it was something where I was terrible at it, but I wanted to be better, and I believed that I could be better at it. How do you know when it's something where you have the potential to be good um versus something else? I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And public speaking, for example, so that is a really good one. I had a guy when I was 22 years old. He pulled me aside. He was a mentor for this campus organization I was a part of. He said, Mike, you have a real ability to connect with people, don't you? And he set me down one on one. He's like, and especially people in smaller groups, like to connect deeply. And I was like, I do. He's like, but you kind of struggle with connecting with people on a larger scale, like in a bigger event or talking to a bigger group. I'm like, yeah, I do. I get nervous and I get my tongue gets tied, all those things. And he's like, well, when you learn how to tap into the same skill set that enables you to connect more deeply with others and learn how to leverage that, because you're inherently not uh, incapable. You are fully capable of connecting with people in a larger group setting, which means you can speak and communicate, but you just haven't leveraged your raw talent in that way. And there's oftentimes mental paradigm blocks. For example, I had a client, her name's Amanda. She was a big Instagram influencer and massive Instagram account. We had a 1-day strategy session together, and we start the session, and she was moving from a YouTube fitness influencer and Instagram to like a business mentor and coach. And she breaks down in tears 20 minutes into our session. I'm like, crap, like this, I got a crying girl on my hands, and she's like, young, 22, something like that, and got a big brand. And I was like, oh, what the heck am I going to do? Well, then I had her imagine what because she was like, Mike, I'm totally stuck on my message. I have no idea what to say anymore. I was like, all right. So she's in an unresourceful state, an unresourceful mental path. Her neurological pathway is not good at that point.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, what could I do? What could I do? I went to my NLP background. I'm a master practitioner of NLP. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have her imagine someone that she knows her message, that loves her message, that speaks powerfully. And so I had her imagine. I asked her, hey, who do you admire? She said, Oprah Winfrey. I was like, beautiful. So then we got in a meditative state, and I subconsciously guided her into imagining what it would be like to be Oprah. How would Oprah walk? How would Oprah talk? How would Oprah show up on stage? What's it feel like to command a room with 20,000 people and deliver your message? At least the way she imagined it, right? And then what happened is now we had gotten her out of an unresourceful state. Then I had her go back and imagine being her in that resourceful state as Oprah. Like
Yeah.
and now in literally the next 30 days and the rest of the year, she was on fire. She
Wow.
got dramatically unstuck. So I would say you can communicate and connect with people, right? You do this podcast gig all week long, right?
Right. Right.
So there's no reason you can't connect on stage and can't
Yeah.
you just what happens when you get on stage? Do you get a little tongue tied or get a little nervous?
I mean, especially at first, I did. I mean, I think I've gotten over that over the
Yeah.
years of doing it. But yeah, absolutely. I would, as much as I prepped, I got in a room in front of a couple hundred people, and I'd be like, I'd forget my notes, and I'd be looking at the slide deck instead of actually, to your point, trying to connect with people and actually make an impact. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just anchoring in and finding moments. Like it's really creating mental anchors and then finding new neural pathways. Like one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm not as good of an entertainer. Like I need more edutainment in my social
yeah,
media accounts and all that, right? Because I'm smart, I know my stuff, whatever. But I got to be funny and all the other things. Well,
yeah, yeah.
who is phenomenal as an entertainer that I like and admire? Deion Sanders, prime time. Who else? Muhammad Ali. So now what am I doing? I'm studying, watching Muhammad Ali, watching like Jerry Seinfeld, watching some of these other people, and imagining myself talking and connecting and tapping into like that energy and borrowing. Even like Napoleon Hill had his like a board of advisors, virtual board of advisors that he wrote about in Think and Grow Rich. He would say, imagine Lincoln and Jesus and Moses and Rockefeller or whoever is at your board and they're advising you. So I'm in a way I'm doing that to help me tap into my next level.
As far as to kind of bring in the agile component to this, I mean, would you agree that this process of growth is iterative, and how do you coach someone when maybe they have the perfectionist mindset and they just kind of want everything to be great all at once, and kind of get discouraged? Like, how do you keep somebody motivated when iteration is really part of the process?
I like the quote by Garrett White. It says, "At the beginning you will suck. Eventually you'll suck a little bit less, and eventually you'll suck a little bit less. Eventually you'll suck so little that you're actually good."
Nice.
So, and one of my other mantras is progress over perfection is my obsession.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
So, anyway, I love to remind everybody to be obsessed with progress, not perfection.
Well, one last question before we wrap up here. As a fellow author, I always like to just ask a little bit about the process of writing. In writing your book, The Genius Within, what did you learn throughout the writing process? Obviously, your goal was to write what you'd already learned, but what did you kind of learn through the writing process, and what might you do differently in writing a follow-up book?
Yeah, good question. I liked my process. I partly borrowed process elements of it from Michael Gelb. He's written 18 books. He's a friend of mine, and he always mind maps out his book first. So I always mind map out my books first. I've already actually ended up writing 3 books so far. I've got a few more in the works, but I've only released one. And then what I end up doing, mind mapping it, then talking it out, like voice recording it, then getting it transcribed with AI. And then soon enough, I've got 40, 50, 60 pages. It's imperfect, unedited, but then I've got something. Like the hardest part is the start. And then I'm not that great at finishing things, and when it gets detailed, and like I had someone doing all the citations, I had all the I wasn't going to cite everything like crazy. And I work better with an assistant writer. Frankly, I can get the first concepts out, but then I'm brilliant at the first 80% in the high level conceptualized part, and then but at the last 20% are a real struggle for me. So I need someone helping me with that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. The I mean, I've heard of the mind mapping process, but um, doing the voice dictation, I haven't tried that one yet. I'm curious. I'm curious about that. I do a fair amount of typing throughout to get to a starting point, but that's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to try that out. Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, man. It unlocks. Our minds do not think Roman numeral style straight down the page. We
Yeah.
think all over the place, and if you can learn how to tap into that and tap into your creativity, and allows you to organize and move things around. So yeah, mind mapping is amazing.
Nice, nice. Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
You can find me on mikezeller.com. You can grab a free copy of my book at geniuswithinbook.com or all the social media sites. I'm at the Mike Zeller on every social media platform, from TikTok to LinkedIn to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. And then also, I have a free 6-step guide that you can grab to finding your genius, and you just text the word genius, U, as in the letter U, to 474747. Genius U to 474747.
Nice, nice. Well, again, I'd like to thank Mike Zeller, author of The Genius Within, Your Natural Pathway to Impact, Fulfillment, and Wealth, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom. Talk with you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.